There we go. Okay, good. Richard, how are you feeling today? And what are you expecting to get out of the calls today?
Actually, I'm feeling pretty good. This morning was in this other volunteer work that I do. It's a gathering of people who have gone through various kinds of suicide kinds of experiences. But one of the foundational sort of reasons for the group to start is for those who have actually had a personal experience. And very often that personal experience is tied in with a negative experience with a helping system world. Um, the professionals and others are in many ways afraid of that kind of experience in people's life. And they tend to shy away from it, or they tend to refer it away, um, often under the guise of, well, I'm not good at this, or I don't know how to treat this, so I'll send you over to somebody who does. And they don't really care who they send them to. It's just getting them out of their hair. Um, anyway, so we're running what we're calling community circles every 3 or 4 months, and inviting people who've had these experiences to join in a safe and um, supportive kind of environment. So we had one this morning, and we had a number of different people than we've had in the past, and they were really upfront and honest about some of their own personal experiences, um, and about the way in which the helping world, if you want, or the healing world has responded to them very often in a negative way. And so the whole idea is to try and and help people find their voice and be able to express that voice in a way that everybody listens. So it really underneath, even though we've never really identified it as such, but it's really an invitation to be engaged in Bohemian dialogue, um, and to just be open to it. And there's no kind of helping, um, or even supportive comments to whatever people are saying. The idea is just listen, and almost like in Steve's experiences of being silent, is to be silent and be a genuine listener. In this case, not just to yourself, but to those who are around you and sharing their voices. And that too is very hard, to not want to get in there and sort of say, I hear you, or I support you, or um, and so it was an invigorating morning. And so that was the start of the day, and tonight is for me is sort of the end of that day, and look to have some of the same kind of energy boosting experience this evening. Joel has arrived. Joel, how are you feeling? What's your expectations?
Hi, it's good to see everybody. My expectations is to essentially, kind of finish the book strong. It's just really good to see everybody. I just that's what I'm really focused on this evening. And I don't, I don't know what the context of what Richard was just sharing, but I was actually just talking about it with a friend. We were both mutual friends of CJ, and the idea and the spirit of comprehensivity, and it very much speaks to what Richard was just saying. So, and in a way, it speaks to the idea of what Amy Edmondson would call psychological safety, and how CJ was able to create an environment uh, somehow where everybody felt heard, but he was still be able to prioritize um, and make it worth everybody's time to be there. So it was something that we were reminiscing. So it was very much similar to what you were sharing just a moment ago, Richard. So anyway, just good to see everybody. I'm looking forward to moving on with a critical path. Has anybody not gone yet? And how are you doing? What would you like to take away from today?
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, this I started actually a bit too early talking about this, but so I will share. Actually, I want to talk more about starting to read Wayne's book and being able to see how Bucky and a lot of the thoughts and the philosophies that we talk about is showing up there brilliantly. And because I studied real estate as in I went to learn, I read books, and I think the first one that got me going was Robert Kiyosaki, right? So I've read what he talked about in Real Estate Riches, and then it was Dolph DeRoos, and I went to a local lady who is known as the property queen of Asia. So because we still need to know what's happening locally, and we don't know where to go look for property, right? So, but what I saw with Wayne's book was it was easy for even I'm not one who has done a lot about property. I've done some, right? And it's everything there, like doing everything with nothing. That one I think was brilliant. And then and I'm sure, Steve, you do a lot of the things that's in there because your name has shown up at the back of the book, quoted, and also acknowledgement to you as well. So that was brilliant. And there are other things like doing together. It's a togetherness. You don't do it separately, and then it's a whole idea of both sides. Being able. So I can see a little bit as to how you can work and do a win-win with the buyer and the seller, but that went beyond what I imagined. And that's just the first early chapters, yeah? So I was sharing here earlier that because it allows me to get to know how, Wayne applied it. And I would really love to see how, I'm not saying applying is about living it. Yeah, living it in your lives, in your area of expertise, in just everything you do. And I was asking how to go about finding out more about what every one of you do, because Richard's doing it with education and the suicide, and we do deal with students who either threaten suicide or they've come to us threatened, as in like with their families, come to us because they've been cutting, and we've had cases of ex-students who have left. They graduated, and so far I know 3 of my ex-students have committed suicide, one at 27, one at early 20s, one touching about 20 years old, So I would love to find out more. And you're right. I really wish that this from understanding that little bit about Bohmian dialogue, that it's taught in really like being front and center for people learning psychology. Okay, because I've come across I've got a lot of our people who are counselors who join us, and they've been beautiful. And I've also come across us where their minds are so close that wow, I don't know how they can counsel people when their minds are closed, so that's one. The other is like Steve, more of what you do, and then Joe, because you understand you work and you one of the contractors for the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I would really love how that works, because it is such a conundrum there, right? Because the Navy is about defense, okay, but also there is you're talking about weaponry versus livery, and how does that show up, and how do you, so things like this, I really would love to hear more as we discuss a lot of the stuff that comes up. Yeah. So that's my putting it out there. Oh, and you know, like Susan, you know, she's doing surgery and everything. I don't know how that shows up because half the time, half of medicine is so opposed to the things that Bucky talks about. So how does she navigate that? Of course, a lot of things is about living, but then you also have people who, you know, make decisions that create such a lot of problems for doctors as well. You know, so that's something really interesting to know. Yep. And so, Steve, how do you feel, and what do you would like to take away today? I think you're muted, Steve.
Okay, there we go. And so interesting to me, with all that you have going on and as busy as you are, that you want to get more feedback and more input. I know it just blows me away. No, we could maybe figure that out. Maybe because we're about to finish this book. I think actually that if we stick to it tonight, even though we started a little bit late, I think we can finish off the book. Let me just share with you a little bit how I'm feeling and what's going on. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm amazed at how what dawned on me as I was hearing you all share is that, especially Anne, when you were talking about real estate, you know, I think that I had a worldview that was inclusive in the first place. And so when I got into real estate, I did it from a paradigm of inclusion. So I was constantly solving problems. And like you say, I mentioned in Wayne's book, he and I were in a lot of the same circles. Wayne has his own, he's done some amazing things that I've never gotten to. And I've done some different things, but we've interacted a lot. And our main thing is we like to solve problems. So we go in and take a look at what all the things are and then see what else we can bring into it that somebody forgot, you know. And that's what his 101 recipes is all about. It's about, well, there's a thing of value over here, but nobody sees it. Well, what if they see it? What if they see it in a different light? And then how can that all work together? So what I realized as you were talking is that, you know, I've always had this attitude of inclusion, and maybe that's the reason why I'm willing to read Critical Path with all you people, is because, you know, it's about inclusion, it's about energy, it's about overlapping spheres of interactivity and relationship and interrelationship. And I've lived my life from that paradigm. And so now finding Bucky's words, it just fits into what I already thought. And I think if some people weren't into that paradigm, Bucky's words would be really hard to grapple with, you know. But I think each of us here on this call have a sense of that kind of thing about how important inclusion is. Of course, Richard, dealing with this in his industry, that's a major thing that he's coping with. And we talk about science with doctors and stuff. Susan, she's been sharing lately about what's been going on with her. I'll tell you, our world is in a mess. We need more inclusion. That's all there is to it. So that's it. Let me tell you how I last time we actually, and this is so amazing because we haven't read from this book since the last time you were here. We had Easter come up, and then you were at your opening, and you did something else, and then there were times when Richard and I were the only ones here, Joe and I were the only ones here, and we thought, you know, we could do this, but we're so close to the end of this book. Let's wait to have a few more people. We went into this last section of part 4, where he starts talking about his fly's eye dome prototype. And I thought, you know, we can finish this off when we start back at the beginning of that. So we ended off like on page 314, but most of that is pictures. Between 310 and 314 is pictures. So we're going to start on page 310, and we're just going to start from those 3 dots on page 310.
Okay.
And I think if we stick to it, even though we're a little bit, I'm going to do a different kind of sharing here. Even though we started a little bit late, I think if we really stick to it, we can get this done tonight. And if we don't, we end up not doing it, we won't. But there are 3 dots in the middle of page 310 right there, and we're gonna go from there. And I think if we, a lot of this is review, but looking at it the second time, perhaps we'll see more to it. And if it takes 2 if we have to go do this 2 or 3 more times to finish it off, I'm willing to do that. But I think this is a good place to start because he starts talking about finalizing here his on housing and things like that. So let's go from here. Any other thoughts before we begin to read? Okay.
Uh,
We can, I like the idea of trading off. So if somebody wants to read 3 or 4 paragraphs and then we'll go from there. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can start.
Good. Who wants to start?
I can get us started.
Okay, cool.
Since 1927, I've been deeply involved with the issue of making high-performance shelter available to all humanity. By high performance, I mean such environment controlling shells and their survival equipment as can be produced only by the most advanced aircraft and space technology, and the latter's level of technical problem solving. In 1927, I anticipated 50-year long gestation period for a new building industry. Since 1977 was the 50-year target date, I began the prototyping of my fly eye dome, which embodied designed attention to all that which I had learned not only throughout the 50-year development period, but in all my 32 earlier years. They will not be sold like telephones, they will be rentable. The fly eyes uses a very few types of nestable mass-produced fiberglass sheet aluminum of thin gauge or polyester coated sheet steel components that, when assembled, produced a 5/8 sphere of the hexpent geodesic configuration, as with the ports and pores of all organic systems. The size and shape of these openings sort, sieve and classify the inbound and outbound physical component traffic of metabolic regeneration, which the fly eyes domes embody. I can't get used to
Okay,
fly
oh.
eyes.
Hang on just a second. So he says hexpent geodesic configuration. So he's talking about hexagons and pentagons, I do believe. And he's kind of coined a term there to talk about that. And this fly's eye dome is right down here. That's what he's talking about. So I wanted to make sure we move to the page before we continue to do any more reading. And so this is what he's talking about, this fly's eye dome. Cool. Any comments or questions before Joe continues? And notice it looks like a honeycomb. Looks like when he talks about or anyway, he talked about fiberglass luci, the ports and pores of an organic system. So that kind of is reminiscent of a honeycomb, you know?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it is interesting how essentially his structures really do mimic nature.
Yeah.
And so it permeates every aspect of his thinking.
Cool. And that
Fly
does
eye
look like a
dome.
fly's eye right there, doesn't it?
What's that?
That looks like a fly's eye, that dome thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
The fly's eye domes, pores are all 7-foot diameter circular openings. These circular openings serve alternately as doors, vents, solar energy cell mounts, etc. The circular openings constitute 3/4 of the surface of the domes, while the manufactured shell structure components constitute only 1/4 of the structure's surface. Since the circles have rigid rims, the closure of the circles can be accomplished by 2 spread apart drum heads of tensed thin film or fabric materials, ergo at low relative cost. The structural shell components constitutes a comprehensive leak-proof water shedding system that, with the circular openings covered, leads all rain and melting snow into the shell's watercourse cistern cisterning system.
Cisterning. He's
Cisterning.
making a verb out of the word cistern.
The cylindrically rimmed circular openings will be tensely covered with opaque, translucent or transparent glass, plastic film, metal glazing or screening, or some combination thereof. They will serve as energy harvesters in the operation of the dwelling by parabolically collecting incoming energy in sunlight, liquid heating cells, and by circular opening mounted wing drag driven air turbines. That was an interesting paragraph.
Yeah.
The structural shell components constitute a comprehensive leak-proof water-shedding system that fly's eye domes are of two sizes. The smaller 26-foot diameter one and constructed of only one type of mass-produced, strong, lightweight, hyperbolic saddle form component. The larger 50-foot diameter one is comprised of only two types of mass-produced structural shell and watershed constituting components, which are also of the hyperbolic saddle type. Both 26 and 50-foot diameter domes can consist of two concentric identical domes with a space of 6 inches between and no metallic interconnectors. This spacing produces highly effective insulation as well. Hang on. This spacing produces highly effective insulation as well as an excellent hot and cold air ducting system. The concentric domes interconnection is accomplished with a 7-foot diameter outside circle and 6-inch deep conic tubes made fast at the 7-foot outside end of the circular openings of the spheres. The smaller fly's eye provides the optimally workable fundamentals for comfortable, efficient living in a 2-story shelter. It is small compared to a conventional house, but huge next to a van, camper, or almost any of the 1,000 of yachts enthusiastically occupied while tied up at the marina slips. Optimum use of the space will be important. The larger fly's eye is 50 feet in diameter, capable of enclosing 3 or more stories, each of 2,000 square feet of 2,000 square feet floor area, a garden, trees, and a pool. Sorry about that. While also equipped with all the living essentials at different levels, its space utilization will be quite different from the smaller fly's eye. The 50-footer accommodates with what we call the Garden of Eden living in a garden. The fly's eye domes are designed as components of a livery service. Does anybody wish to?
Yeah, so here's the 50-foot dome here. There's a little guy standing there. This is his 50-foot dome. The picture above shows the platform structure within the dome and all the infrastructure underneath over there. And evidently this can be multi-storied. Very interesting. Man, is this guy ahead of his time. Still today.
Has anybody actually seen the actual one of this? I'm fascinated. Yeah.
Well, evidently there's a prototype right there with a human being. Well, that could be an artist rendering, but I got the intention that the 50-foot prototype had actually been built. Yeah, there it is.
Mhm.
Says prototype.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never fully understood what this is all about, and yet right now it's starting to come into my vision, if you want, in a clearer way. And yeah, what I'm linking to now is that there's a family in northern Norway, well within the Arctic Circle, who have built a standard type of home, it's a square box, if you want, type of home, and they have domed it. Not with this, but it's the doming, and so that allows them to live in the cold northern regions of Norway in a summer-like environment the entire time, and they have a garden and so forth. This seems to be, now that I'm looking at it and hearing what Joe was reading, it's the same idea that we could have these 26-foot or 50-foot ones, but say 26-foot for a residential area, and it would dome your little 4x4 house, your box house, if you wanted a box house. And I'm just wondering if that's really what it's all about. It's amazing, you think of some of all the talk that's going on certainly in our country and other countries about the lack of affordable housing and the lack of the type of housing that you need for changing conditions. For example, whether it's for the homeless or whether it's for the influx of immigrants coming from, and right now coming, say, from the Ukraine, or coming from other either war-torn or perhaps famine or drought-related countries. That something like this could be created very quickly and give people an environment that is conducive to them. It's like you have somebody come here from Saudi Arabia, in this case into Canada, and it freezes their butts off until they get accustomed to it. But imagine if you moved over here and went into a building that was covered by this type of dome, and you could sort of have a much more graduated sort of adjustment into your new environment.
Yeah, I think this is an actual photograph as well, too, here.
Yeah.
Because there's a guy on a ladder. This is obviously sand or dirt or something. Those are trees. I don't think those trees are put in an elevation. I think this is a photograph as well.
Yeah.
And he says that there would be two concentric spheres that would be about 6 inches apart. And that would create, here we go, two concentric identical domes with space of 6 inches between and no metallic interconnectors. The spacing provides highly effective insulation as well as excellent hot-cold air ducting.
Okay. Actually, what I'd like to share is this. Okay, first and foremost, the appearance, right? It looks like an igloo. It looks like a beehive, and also what's the other thing? I mean, not golf ball, but the reverse of it. But no. Naturally, igloo. We're talking igloo, beehive, and what's the other thing I was thinking of? Okay, never mind. I lost the third one. Because I went on to search. It's actually in Miami. The Fly's Eye Dome.
Yeah.
Yes, and the thing is, I'm looking. 50 feet is 5 stories, literally, right? It's not small, but
No.
it doesn't look too expensive to build, you know, like if you were to build a 5-story building, Steve, I think you can tell us how much that would cost, right? But because the structure itself is strong, it's just the inner parts that you have to build in, right? And in Malaysia, like the residential area I'm living in, there are lots and lots of houses, anything between a land area 20 by 70, a lot of that. Then on the upper end, you have the 24 by 75. And that's, I'm talking about the terrace houses, right?
Mhm.
So the 26 footer is not small. It's actually equivalent to the size of you know, a family dwelling for about 4 or 5 people. You know, so you know, when we think of it in numbers, when he wrote the words, you can't picture the size, right? Then when the photos started showing up, they're really not small. And if a person can live in 50-foot homes, oh, that's a lot of space right there. I mean, what I'm saying is that when I say if people can live in 50-foot domes, because if the price can be brought down, then more people can live in bigger spaces and not confined, tight spaces as in the low-cost flats and so on, you know? Okay, anyway, that's what I have to say about this. Oh, this is amazing, the photos.
I'm glad you said that, Anne, actually, in the sense that, you know, I just as to, you know, kind of the futuristic thinking as opposed to the people living in flats. And I think about, you know, people that had immigrated from the country and where they had, you know, multiple people, multiple families sometimes in the same building, multiple people in 2 rooms. And they, you know, lived in a more minimalist kind of setting. And yet there's this idea of continuous growth where people now just, you know, they used to have go from, you know, 2-bedroom houses, they have to go to 4-bedroom houses, they have to go to 5. But what we're seeing here is something that's pretty interesting. And this is what's real innovation, is the optimizing the use of space and energy. And that's what real innovation is. It's finding out where there's not as great a trade-off as we perceive it to be, and where we're actually, you know, kind of using things much more effectively. Anyway.
Well, thank you for saying it was in Florida. I did that as Google search, and I'm just sharing what you announced, Ann. So thank you for pointing that out. And then here's one in some snow. This is
Oh,
Pittsburgh.
wow.
You know, I've seen these for rent, and they're extremely high if somebody should want to rent one for a short period of time, generally speaking. The ones
They
that I've
have
seen.
a little hexagon house on top, a little penthouse on top, like a restaurant, and then stories in here. Anyway, very interesting. Okay, so okay, here. We'll go back to this. Okay. Who would like to read next? Thank you, Joe.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
The basic hardware components will produce a beautiful, fully equipped, air deliverable house that weighs and costs about as much as a good automobile. It's crazy. Not only will it be highly efficient in its use of energy and materials, it also will be capable of harvesting incoming light and wind energies. The software part of the product will include a service industry to air or highway transport, install, lease, maintain, remove, and relocate the domes, or as separate hardware components. And as mentioned, they will not be sold. Both the 26 and 50-foot Fly's eye domes are semi-autonomous, i.e. have no sewer, water pipe, or electric power supply connections. The personal hygiene, clothes, and utensil washing functions are accomplished with a high-pressure compressed air and atomized water fog gun, which requires only a pint of water per hour. The human excrement is sittingly deposited in the dry packaging toilet. The human sits on the fresh plastic film covered fore and aft seat halves. The excrement falls into the top open plastic tube that as it is formed by the two converging edges of the two plastic sheets, which are then electro-sealed together from the originally separate two plastic film rolls, whose film strips first covered the two seat sides. The hermetically sealed off tubular section containing the excrement is then mechanically detached and conveyed away as litter to be neatly packed in a corrugated carton clearly marked for pickup and dispatched to the methane gas producing plant and the dry powder fertilizer manufacturer, or to be processed into methane gas and fertilizer powder by accessory equipment of the dome home itself. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just
Anybody reading that, that guy should be institutionalized. He's nuts.
okay. I'll do one more paragraph and then I'll pass it on. Having undertaken the solution by artifacts of the world's great housing crisis, I came to regard the history of cities. Cities developed entirely before the thought of electricity or automobiles, or before any of the millions of inventions registered in the United States Patent Office for eminently mobile men. Cities have become obsolete in terms of yesterday's functions, warehousing both new and formerly manufactured goods and housing immigrant factory workers. Rebuilding them to accommodate the new needs of world men requires demolition of the old buildings and the replacement of the new and now obsolete real estate, streets, water, and sewer lines, and yesterday's no longer logical overall planning geometries. I sought to take on this challenge and developed plans for an entirely feasible and practical new way for humans to live together economically. Old Man Rivers City is one such design. Okay, I'm going to check that one now. Okay. Richard, you want to read next,
Yeah.
or Steve?
Yeah, I'll go for Old Man River City, undertaken for East St. Louis, Illinois, takes its name from the song first sung by Paul Robeson 50 years ago, which dramatized the life of Afro-American Blacks who lived along the south of St. Louis banks of the Mississippi in the days of heavy north-south river traffic in cotton. Cessation of the traffic occurred when the East-West Railway network outperformed the north-south Mississippi, Mexican Gulf, and Atlantic water routes, which left many of its riverbank communities, such as East St. Louis, marooned in economic dead spots. East St. Louis is an American city overwhelmed by poverty. Its population of 70,000 is 70% Black. I originally came to East St. Louis to discuss the design and possible realization of the Old Man River cities, having been asked to do so by East St. Louis community leaders themselves, being first approached by my friend Catherine Dunham, the famous Black dancer. At the community leaders' request, I presented a design that would help solve their problem. It's a moon crater shape. The crater's truncated cone top opening is a half mile in diameter, rim to rim, while the truncated mountain itself is a mile in diameter as its base ring. The city has a 1 mile diameter geodesic quarter sphere transparent umbrella mounted high above it to permit full all-round viewing below the umbrella's bottom perimeter.
Okay, let's go ahead and finish the paragraph, I suppose.
Yeah. The top of the dome roof is 1,000 feet high. The bottom rim of the umbrella dome is 500 feet above the surrounding terrain, while the crater top esplanade looks 250 feet radially inward from the umbrella's bottom, is at the same 500-foot height. From the esplanade, the truncated mountain cone slopes downwardly inward and outward to ground level 500 feet below.
Let me pause and go get some of these pictures. I can't believe they're not here. You know what? I might not have pasted them in. I think I missed that. So let's do this. Let me see. 500 feet below. Okay, that's where we left off. Let me come over here to the reading. And I'll take a moment and just really quickly find this name reading. Critical faculty, critical. Okay, good. And then let me find page 319 as soon as this loads in. Page 319. Okay, there we go. See, this is the umbrella over the top of the city right there. And then here's the city. It looks like a moon crater.
Yeah,
And
We
this
can't
must be-
see.
Go ahead.
the picture's not showing up.
The picture's not showing up. Okay, pardon me. Hang on. Thank you very much. I'll screen share.
There.
Okay, good. So your city looks like there's a stadium down there. And this looks like some kind of road in or something. There's a stadium. Up here, there's the this is an elevation. So these are graphic drawings by architects. And this is the dome, the umbrella dome that's supposed to give all the shade.
Ah,
Was it ever built?
I don't think so. I don't know. We're gonna find out.
I think there was something built, but it didn't get to this kind of rendering.
Yeah. So I think what might work here is if I cut this down like this, slide this over here, and then put this over here, get rid of that. And then slide this over this way. We can read and take a look at the picture simultaneously, Richard.
Oh, okay.
We started off right here, so we're starting off the moon craters inward and
Yeah.
outward.
The moon crater's inward and outward exterior surface slopes each consist of 50 something. The terrace floors are tiered vertically 10 feet above or below one another. All the downwarding slopes of the moon's crater terrace cone are used for communal life. Its outward sloping tree-planted terraces are entirely for private life dwelling. The private home terraces on the outward circular bank are subdivided by trees and to isolate them one from the other. This garden divided exterior terracing hides the private home terraces from one another while permitting each an unobstructed view outward to the faraway landscape. Thus landscape partitioned from one another, individual homes beneath the umbrella dome do not need their own separate weatherproofs. The experience will be that of living outdoors in the garden without any chance of rain and out of sight and sound of other humans, yet being subconsciously aware that your own advantage is not at the expense of other people's zonal advantage.
We've
That's
seen
actually
some
interesting.
hotels.
If we could
Go
stop
ahead.
there.
Go ahead, Joe. What's that?
One of the, oh God.
What did you say?
No, one of the things that I found so fascinating about Wayne's book is that it essentially reached a non-zero sum game. And that's essentially what Bucky's speaking to with this, past paragraph, where he figures out, both the strengths and weaknesses of the two parties involved and actually figures out using the principle of leverage as a way to maximize the result, the desired result for both parties. And so really embodying Bucky's principles as far as when he's looking at it, and that's essentially what Bucky was talking about in that past paragraph.
Yeah. Okay. I guess the pictures are about as helpful as they can be, and they're probably distracting at this point. Okay, cool. Zonal advantage. You want to continue, Richard?
Yeah, the floors of the individual homes on the outward terrace slopes penetrate inwardly of the mountainside to provide an 85% enclosed family apartment set back into the mountain surface. Each family's apartment floor area totals 2,500 feet, being 100 feet inwardly extended and 25 feet 1 inch wide at its outside terrace front line and 25 feet at its innermost chord line. Each apartment occupies only 1/600th of the circle's 360 degrees of arc. In addition, there will be 1,300 square feet of public space for each of the 25,000 families that the Oldman River City will accommodate on the 50 interior communal terrace slopes of the Crater City. The geodesic sky parasol umbrella protects the whole of Oldman River City from rain or snow. The sky dome is transparent. Its aluminum and stainless steel truss structure will be covered in 2 alternate ways. One, glazed with wire reinforced glass, ergo fireproof. 2, with a pneumatically filled glass cloth pillowed umbrella. The dome will admit all biological life-supporting sun radiation. The great umbrella is a watershed whose runoff is collected in dome-level reservoir for a high-pressure fire sprinkler and service purification system, after which the reservoir's overflow is piped downwardly to a dome surrounding moat reservoir. The interior most circular diameter ground level of Oldman River cities is twice the size of the playing ground area of any of the world's largest athletic stadia. This means that it has 4 times the interior horizontal area of a regulation football stadium's oval ground area. The terraced angle of repose slopes of Oldman River cities, both outside and inside, are very gradual slopes and are thus unlike the steeply tiered athletic stadium seating slopes. The angular difference is like that of a reclining chair versus an upright chair. Many of the lower tiers of Oldman River City's interior terraces have enough horizontal surface to accommodate groups of tennis courts, whole school and playground areas, supermarkets, outdoor theaters, etc. The terraces are of graduated widths, with the narrowest at the top. They become progressively wider at each lower level. Inside, that is below the moon's crater, 3.5 mile circumference surface terrace mountain mass, are all the communal services not requiring daylight. For instance, all the multi-level circumferential trolleyaways, interlevel ramps, roadways, and parking lots with numerous radial crosswalks and local elevators. There are radial crosswalk bridges at every 4 terrace levels. This provides bridges never more than 2 decks up or down for walking homeward, outwardly from the interior community bowl to one's individual terrace, tree-hidden dwelling area. In addition to the foregoing interior structuring and facilities, the factory, office, and parking space within the Crater Mountain is colossal, about 10 million square feet. The city is as complete a living, working, studying, and playing complex as is a great ocean passenger ship, but without the space limitations imposed by the ship's streamlined forming to accommodate swift passage through the seas. Because its lifestyle will be so vastly improved over present-day living, Old Man River City has been designed to accommodate 25,000 families, i.e. 125,000 humans, though East St. Louis has now only 70,000 humans grouped in 14,000 families. There are many exciting consequences of Old Man River City's community life being introverted and its private life extroverted. Within the interior community bowl, everyone can see what all the rest of the community is doing, as do the 125,000 member audiences of our present day great bowl games. See all other humans present, though indistinctly at the furthest distances. The difference in Old Man River City's experience will be that each of its 125,000 individuals will have an average of 260 square feet of communal terrace roaming space versus the 6 square feet of seating space of the football stadium fan, i.e. OMR citizen will average 43 times as much free space as does the football fan. From the individual external home terrace on the crater's outer slopes, one can see no humans other than those within one's own family's home terrace domain. People can look outwardly, however, from the Old Man River City as far as the eye can see at the interstate Mississippi River, scenery outside the moon crater's umbrella limits. The Old Man River City's home views are analogous to those of individuals living in dwellings on mountainsides, such as those of residents on the hills of Hong Kong Island or those above Berkeley, California. Such hillside dwellers overlook vast, mysteriously inspiring scenic areas, ever changing with the nights, days, and weather. The total roof surface area of the 1 mile diameter quarter sphere dome is only 2% that of the total roof and exterior skin surface area of all the buildings, standing on an equal ground area in any large conventional city. The amount of external shell surface through which each interior molecule of atmosphere can gain or lose heat is thus reduced by 98%. Another energy conservation factor is operative. For every time we double the sphere's diameter, we increase its surface by 4 and its volume by 8. Therefore, the energy efficiency doubles each time we double the dome size. This means that the structural efficiency, useful volume, and energy conservation are all at optimum in Old Man River City project. Throughout the year, Old Man River cities will have a naturally mild climate with a large aerodynamically articulated wind and weather controlled ventilator system atop and around the dome. Together with the 500-foot high vertical opening that runs entirely around the city below, the umbrella, the atmospheric controllability will guarantee fresh air as well as energy conservation. The umbrella will jut out above and beyond all the outer slope, residential terrace areas, as does the grandstand roof, so that neither rain or snow will drift horizontally inward, being blocked from doing so by the mass inertia of the vast quantity of atmosphere embraced by the umbrella, as well as by the vertical mass of the crater's cone within the dome. Optimum efficiency also characterizes the way in which Old Man River City is to be produced. The 3.5 mile circumferential moon crater and its terracing will be developed entirely with modern high-speed highway building equipment and earth-moving techniques, as well as with suspension bridge building and airspace technologies. Construction will begin with the installation of a set of concentrically interswitching railway tracks with tangential shunting bypass tracks on which great cranes and other machinery will travel. The mammoth 500-foot high and 2,000-foot wide base, A-frame shaped circumferential segments of the crater become highly repetitive and economically producible. There will be 100 columns rising from the A-frame tops at the crater's top rim esplanade. These 100 columns will be 500 feet high and will be spaced 40 meters apart, mounted above the A-frames. The tops of the 100 columns will be 1,000 feet high and will be capped by a circumferential ring. The whole terrace crater structure, inside and out, will be of thin wall reinforced concrete. This terrace shell will be cast mounted upon and will thus encase an inverted kitchen sieve like domical basket, consisting of omnitriangulated quarter sphere geodesic basketball suspension web of fine diameter, high tensile steel rods and wires. The spider fine steel web basket will be suspended from the A-frame tops at the base of the 100 columns. The whole structure is, in effect, a circular, triangular, self-stabilizing suspension bridge, principled terrace ferroconcrete bowl with the human occupants and their goods constituting only a small fraction of the stress loads of equal magnitude highway traffic bridges. The 1500.
Sorry, can we pause there and actually have a look at the, the one with actually the umbrella as well, because I'm not able to imagine them. Imagine it actually.
It's
Yeah.
kind of high resolution. Oops, I'm sorry. We just went to the tech. I went one page too far. Hang on. There we go. It's got a lousy exposure. It's kind of
Resolution.
exposed, but that's it. You can kind of see the outside right side here, and then imagine it going around.
It's suspended, is it?
Yeah, on 100 pillars, I think he said, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those ideas of whether or not it's going to be accepted locally.
Hmm.
Here's a design that's on page, the previous page. So this is on page 318 of the book. This shows the esplanade perimeter, the outer perimeter, and this is the community. Kind of shows the design here. Here's the reservoir moat that surrounds the circle, which would be outside of this circle here, as shown, because these little points here represent the peaks up here.
All right.
So this is the top view and this is a side view. And there's the dome going across the top.
Okay. Now I can see.
Okay. And there's the moat he described. That would be any rainwater that wasn't used would go into the moat. Hopefully that kind of.
Oh yeah, that helps. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't include those pictures in the PDF file. I'll put them in there for next time we read through.
Well, 1.7 million
Yeah.
square meters. That makes it 10 million square feet. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I think it can cover. I'm looking at. So if you look at it goes 1 mile across, right? In a 1 square foot mile, if you build regular housing or how many can we? This I have to ask Steve. Yeah, how many can you accommodate? Yeah, actually, in 1 square mile.
I don't know.
That's a good question.
It depends on the zoning of the city. He's representing here that there are 70,000 people living in East St. Louis. He kind of gave the statistics that we read. Oh, there is one more picture. the pictures down below. Let's see if that's helpful.
Square mile. 70,000.
There's another picture right there.
Hmm.
So here's the outer edge of the crater, and this is the umbrella over the top of the crater. Somehow I'm experiencing claustrophobia as I think of 125,000 people in here.
Yeah, but
Look-
I mean, from his description, it looks like everybody will have space.
Yeah,
He said
yeah.
260 square feet of outdoor space.
yeah,
That's not small, you know.
yeah.
Hmm. Go 20
Well,
feet
and-
wide, 15 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. Okay. And so where did we leave off? I think we left off with the highway traffic bridges. Is that where we left off?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, maybe I can
Yes,
read.
it was. Yeah.
All right, the 1,500 meter, 1 mile diameter dome. It's a 1 mile diameter dome itself will be a horizontal wire wheel suspension consisting of an octahedral tensegrity trussed 1/4 sphere geodesic dome suspended horizontally from the 100 circumferential columns. So there were 100 columns that support that umbrella. 1/4 sphere geodesic dome suspended horizontally from the 100 circumferential columns. I just reread. The method means mounting the dome 1/4 of a mile inwardly from the 1 mile diameter parasol dome's outer rim. This results in an inner clear span of only 1/2 mile, a distance comparable to that of the Golden Gate Bridge's central clear span between its two masts.
Mm.
I said to the East St. Louis at the outset of our first resolve must be not to compromise our design solution in order to qualify for any private foundation or government subsidy funds. I think that's pretty important. In other words, if he had to meet any kind of building requirements from any government, he wouldn't have been able to do it. 3/4 of the United States national debt of almost 1 trillion and much of the private debt, which altogether transfers 25 billion a year interest from our nation's pocketbooks to the banks. And boy, he'd be turning over in his grave right now. From our nation's pocketbooks to the banks and insurance companies have been amassed through government building subsidies that were designed strictly as money makers for bankers, real estate operators, and handcraft building industry interests. The funds were not amassed in the interest of individuals and the community. I advised the East St. Louisans that we must develop our design and its production and assembly logistics strictly in terms of the individual and the community's best interest. I said that if we were to solve the human problem and to do so in the most economical and satisfactory manner, independent of building codes, zoning restrictions, etc., while employing airspace technology, effectiveness, and safety. He didn't know about Boeing either. We will do that with which no subsidized housing thus far has done. I pointed out that as with increasing socioeconomic emergencies, the economic support will ultimately materialize simply because we would have the world around humanity is looking for and needs, because we have what world around humanity is looking for and needs. The money-making solutions of housing are exactly what humanity is not looking for, but has to accept, lacking any alternatives.
Wow.
The East St. Louis school children are soon to be provided with a 50-foot diameter miniature OMR moon crater city with which and on which to play, simulating actual living conditions. The children will furnish its terraces with miniaturized scale model equipment landscape material, athletic facilities, interior transportation equipment, factories, and similar materials they will design and make. As the political leader of the East St. Louis, who is formerly principal of its largest high school, says, by the time Old Man River City gets completed, our present high school students will be its grown occupants, and they might just as well start right now using their imaginations and living in and operating it. Fabricating and assembling the model itself will be in strict conformity with all full-scale operations. At the outset meeting of our OMR Cities development, I told the East St. Louisans that I would develop the design and models at my own expense and do so without a fee. I said that what I would design must be so right that the entire community would fall in love with it, or it would be dropped. I said that if they did fall in love with it, I would carry on with all of the development expense, and that they must not allow the project to become a political football. It was fortunate that the East St. Louis community did fall spontaneously in love with the design. This held the project together through many critical moments of preliminary challenges of its validity and practicability. There were many critical meetings wherein skeptics, some of them powerful political activists, declared that this design, with its domed over interior community and exterior private dwelling terraces, might be part of its social enemies' conspiracy to entrap them. Fortunately, the design gradually explained itself until all the leaders of the community, diverse factions, political, ethnic, and economic, as well as city engineer, all agreed on its desirability. I've been greatly aided by Old Man River's development by a group of volunteer architectural students, from Washington University in St. Louis, and above all by Professor James Fitzgibbon, head of Washington University's Architectural School. As I am absent a great deal due to my world traveling, Jim, who is one of my best lifelong friends, has been locally in command of the development. Most powerful support for the East St. Louisans has been provided by Yvette Young, Carl Uchman, and Bob Ahart. Anybody else? Joe, you want to continue reading?
Sure.
Right there, both.
Yeah, both the East St. Louis and St. Louis newspapers and radio and television stations have given good and favorable reception to the project. Now rolled around interest in the Old Man River project beginning to be manifest as interest grows. More and more articles are being published about it, despite its having no public relations or advertising promotion. Quite to the contrary, I have asked the community to have the project gestate at a natural rate, answer questions faithfully when they are asked, but otherwise silently at work. As the first favorable publicity occurred, it was inevitable that Illinois political representation would quickly offer the East St. Louisians their aid in securing government funds, which funds, however, would involve so many restrictions and compromises as to utterly emasculate the OMR city's design rationale. Thus, it was a second victory for the project when I was able to dissuade the community from being tempted by the millions of dollars tendered them. I have never engaged in a development that I have felt to have such promise for all of humanity, while being at the same time so certain realization because its time is imminently at hand. In
Okay,
1951.
let's pause there just for a second. Now he's going to change now and start talking about the development of a mill. And when he does that, we started on page 310. We're now at page 323. So we've read 13 pages. And there's another. The book basically ends on page 346. So we have about another 23 pages. We've read 13. I guess we can start this. Yeah, we can do this. We'll read a couple pages, see pictures of the mill, and then next week we'll finish off with the mill. So let's continue reading. Thank you for letting me kind of like orient myself as to what's going on.
All right, I'll go fast. In
Okay, so
1950
that, by the way, that completes his conversation of the East St. Louis project. And I don't have any idea what the outcome of that was.
I've just been looking it up, and it's silent. It doesn't say whether it was attempted in any way or whether it got shut down for some reason. It just disappeared. I know there was some kind of artifact there. I think there was anyway, that eventually sort of rotted away, I guess. But it's interesting, what I was just looking up, there's nothing on what happened to the whole idea.
Huh.
Yeah, they said actually the one they talk about completion is a dam.
Oh, really?
But not a project, yeah.
Completion is what, Anne?
A dam?
The Old Man Rivers project was, I mean, they did a dam, right?
They did a dam.
Talked about that, but they didn't talk about Old Man Rivers project, whether it got built, but they talked about a dam being built. So that's rather sad, yeah.
Yeah, but that Old Man River Dam is here in Alberta on the Old Man River.
Oh.
And the Old Man River in Alberta runs into the Missouri River at some point, which runs into the Mississippi. So the headwaters of the Mississippi are actually here in my province. Interesting. But I'm pretty sure what you saw about Old Man River Dam is referring to the river here, and the dam. There was a huge dam that was built for hydro purposes.
Okay, let's try another question.
I'm asking my AI over here a question as well.
No answer, hey. This is really odd.
Okay, I got something. Wikipedia has something.
Yeah.
Let's
But
check.
it's a quote from what we just read.
And that's it. There's no outcome there, huh?
Right.
Why did East St. Louis decline? One major reason for the decline of East St. Louis was the city lost its advantage of location. Transportation began to focus on trucking rather than rail. Of course, that doesn't address the issue.
No.
Why is East St. Louis abandoned? Once a bustling industrial center, like many cities in the Rust Belt, East St. Louis was severely affected by the loss of jobs due to the flight of the population to suburbs during the riots in the late 1960s.
There was I'd read one project in particular, and I just can't speak to whether this is it or not, of Buc-ee's, where he ran into problems with essentially the ability to connect to the grid. And I don't know if this has anything to do with that, but and that there wwere labor issues.
Fortunately, they don't hold,
Mm.
they didn't like any of my abbreviations. Okay, well, I think that we're going to, let me see, Fuller, East, I'm going to change my cap so that it doesn't look so strange. I said project.
I'm also more surprised that it didn't get okay. If it didn't work at this place called Old Man Rivers City or Old Man Rivers area, then in East St. Louis, then it wasn't taken up by any other communities either. You know.
I think that was part of it.
Yeah.
Here it is, moon crater shaped. The moon crater's inward now is in inwardly, downwardly. Buckminster Fuller, just a quote from Bucky, just as Richard said. The Old Man
Yeah.
River City would have been a truly massive housing project. The total capacity of the building would be Fuller's model for the city. That looks a little bit different than what we're seeing in the book here.
Yeah. This looks like a dessert.
Yeah.
They caught him by
The city was
surprise.
intended to integrate advanced urban planning concepts with Fuller's utopian ideals, promoting a new way of communal living that was independent of conventional urban constraints. Despite the innovative approach, the project faced skepticism and was never built. It highlighted a mismatch between Fuller's futuristic vision and the immediate needs of the city's residents. Such
Well,
employment and economic development, which led to lack of to a lack of broad support and funding.
yeah, that's the thing, is it didn't conform to any of the funding requirements. This back in the 80s, I was doing developments and I was trying to do what we called back then, and is still really a used term. I was developing mixed use condominiums so that I could take a multi-level thing, put commercial on the bottom, put office on the next floor, put residential above that, and put a garden on top. I couldn't get there. Nobody wanted to fund anything like that. It had to all be boxes in little zones and little things. It had to be universal building code. And I did a condo conversion project one time with a 36 unit apartment house that was built along a creek. And it was in kind of it was a building was in the shape of an arc. And none of the construction conformed with standard UBC codes, uniform building codes. And I had to have an architect go through and explain to the city that the beams that they'd put into place were better than code. They had to analyze each beam, the length of the beam, the thickness of the beam, the material used in the beam, how much of a span it had, and where it was positioned in the structure, to let them know that it exceeded uniform building code requirements that would have, if standard 2x4s and 2x6s had been used. So I bumped up against that, and we were able to get that project approved, but I had to bounce around with it because it didn't look like standard uniform building codes. In most cities, if it doesn't match a UBC code, they don't know how to get around that unless you bring in an architect and present them the evidence that it actually meets the requirements. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that this is actually highlighting another conversation that I had recently about the sometimes, the problems and as well as some of the benefits of things like venture capital. In the sense that venture capital will fund an idea, whereas in real estate, it becomes a lot harder because they look at comparables, and the codes themselves are something that become constraints. So the financial instruments that are available are not necessarily something that you know, are innovative, I would say, or be no, I wouldn't even use that. Be as willing to fund an idea. They're based on comparables, as they're based almost on, you know, the idea of what already exists. So there's that aspect of it, and this is the community that you're talking about, where you highlighted California, where a group had gotten together and purchased a large piece of land, and they're actually going to try and cut through the red tape that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. And this is a group of Silicon Valley people who tried to build buildings and get housing for their people in Oakland and in and around San Jose, and just got frustrated because of all the restrictions. So they went out and bought a bunch of ground next to the Air Force Base out there, Travis Air Force Base, and it created quite a bit of suspicion. The FBI started to investigate this Delaware corporation, because it was buying all this property next to the Air Force Base, and they thought it was Iran trying to spy on the U.S. Air Force. And so then they decided they come clean, and they have set up visitor centers all around in the valley to communicate to people what they're trying to do. And they're collaborating to build housing and build a project where their people can work and live and not have to go through all the building hassle codes of the state of California, because they're going to incorporate their own little area.
Mm.
So this is a perfect example of it. There's the new community right there.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Vallejo, California. Here's Oakland over here. And
Yeah, this is sort of on its way to Sacramento.
yeah,
As you say, just goes by the Air Force Base there.
yeah, here's Sacramento up here.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah.
People started moving in.
No, it's still in development stages, and they're doing PR work right now.
Okay.
In
So it
fact,
could go the way of the Old Man River.
it could go the way of the Old Man River project. Let's just see what Google says here. If we go, when will the first phase of California Forever be completed? How much land do they own? They own 50,000 acres. Who is funding California Forever? California is multiple Silicon Valley billionaires, including venture capitalist Mark Andreessen. Who owns the most acres in California? Which CEO of California? Who is the CEO of California? This is an Indian immigrant who was involved in venture capital in Silicon Valley.
What's his name?
His name is Jan Schremek. He's on LinkedIn. How much money does the California? Oh, that's a different question. Where is he from? He's from the Czech Republic.
Mm.
Where was Jan born?
Mm.
Czechoslovakia.
Actually, if you really come to think of it, if they can do something off the grid, just like the Earth ships, the Earth ships that people have built, they managed to get approval. People are living in those homes in the US. Because I know in Malaysia they were trying to build it in this area called Jandabaik. And I'm going to follow up and see whether it actually happened in Malaysia. But definitely the Earth ships took off in the US, and they're built very differently. Let me see where they have the Earth ships in the US.
Oh, I was involved with a group of hippie people. We were building Earth ships. I built straw bale houses and mud houses, and we were using tires to build earthships back in the 70s. I was involved with it. It says here in November of 2024, the ballot initiative will come up for approval by Solano County voters. They will have the chance to vote for thousands of good paying local whatever. And when I click on that link, I simply go into the page, and which we'd already seen before.
I think that should be the way, right? It should be the voters, the people voting, right? Not based, because the people in the approval, when it comes to the approval board for building codes and everything, they're basically civil servants who will follow what is existing. They will never explore what is never been done before.
Right.
So when I saw that, the fact that they're getting people to vote, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and look, as part of their public relations, they're promoting 10 guarantees for Solano County that if you'll approve this on the ballot, here's what we guarantee for you. We will bring 15,000 new jobs to the community that will pay at least 125% of the average wage in Solano County. The community won't be able to grow beyond 50,000 residents until we have fulfilled our commitment. Number two, Solano Homes for All. We will provide $400 million in community benefits funding to help Solano County residents buy homes in the new community and to build more affordable homes. If $300 million is allocated to down payment assistance, that would help 6,000 Solano families with $50,000 each. There'll be Solano scholarships. It'll be green. There'll be a downtown smart growth guarantee. Huh?
I want to move there.
Yeah.
I want to move there.
Right.
In our commitment to provide $500 million in community benefits funding and around $200 million for investments in Solano downtowns over the build out towards 50,000 renters, over the build out towards 50,000 renters. But our commitment to Solano does not end there. If the new community grows beyond 50,000 residents, all of these financial commitments will continue to scale up in proportion to the growth of the new community. We are excited to grow in Solano and be a good neighbor. Water guarantee. This is a big deal. In Arizona, they approved all these subdivisions and then put them all on hold and said, before you build those houses, you got to prove that you have water because we're not going to give it to you.
Yeah, actually, they're having problems even with some of them that have been built.
That's right.
Well,
They
there's
have
a whole
to
article in the Wall Street Journal about that. That was yeah, that's pretty big.
They're having to truck water in to some of
Yeah.
those communities. And
Yeah.
there's even talk of building a desalination plant in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Baja California Gulf, and doing like a 300-mile pipeline from the Baja Gulf into Arizona to give them water.
I will say this, sometimes that those constraints lead to new innovations. And only so far as the idea the price of water has been held artificially low.
Yeah.
And thus you have seen very little innovation in a lot of ways in the United States in particular, even the idea of the way our septic system works.
You know, we'll have to put this on our calendar to see, send out a message to everybody in November and let them know if this thing passes. Because if it passes, Anna's going to move to California.
I'm all for
and put a
that.
school. She's going to put a school in California.
And it would be nice to have you here.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. Oh my God.
I really think that probably it's just about time to end, and it's a good pausing place. We could have read a little further, but we'll read about his automated cotton mill design, where he used gravity and multi-levels and everything's in a geodesic dome. It never got built either, but he designed it for North Carolina State University. And that probably is enough that we might spend, if we talk about it like we did today, we might be able to, it might take us 2 weeks to get through that. And right at the end on page 337, he talks about in the 1920s, Frank Lloyd Wright made a drawing of Mile High Tower building and an engineering feasibility, and he had these suspended domes. So we've got a lot of exciting things going on over the next little while. Richard, how are you feeling, and what are your takeaways for today?
Well, feeling pretty good. I guess the big takeaway for me is that the city of Calgary, which is 1.2 million, I guess now, is right in the middle of this zoning issue, and they've got public meetings going on, and the whole idea is to take the residential areas like I live in right now, which is, single home dwellings, sometimes 50-foot lots and 125 feet of yard or back. And they want to change the zoning laws so anything can go in here. And so you can put multifamily kind of dwellings next door to a single family dwelling. We have one across the street where somebody went in and they built a huge, it looks like a boutique hotel for a family of 5. And one of the things it does, the neighboring house is now blocked from any sunlight that comes in through the morning. But I just read something today that the mayor of the city is holding a whole bunch more public meetings and wants people to come out and express their ideas. Years ago in the 1990s, I took to City Hall the idea of Bucky's homeless village in Los Angeles that had been functioning for quite a few years. It was financed by the Trico oil company. And then they were sitting on a lot in downtown, a hotel lot. I think it was a Holiday Inn in downtown LA. It was very successful, but they had to move because the hotel or somebody wanted the parking lot. And people liked the idea. We were having a World Expo bid here, and they were going to do what everybody does when they have Olympics and so forth. They put them in a redevelopment type of area, and then they take all the people who live there, all the poor people, and they run them out of town. We were making the argument that no, don't do that. Build an old man river project kind of system. Build a modular home idea and showcase to the world how we can have affordable housing for those who, for the most part, have to live on the street. It didn't go anywhere because the city had to back. I guess they lost one of the levels of bidding and they were out of the competition. So here we are again, tonight talking about the Old Man River project. And I'm thinking, my gosh, I should go down to one of these zoning meetings and put it in front of everybody and say, here, build this. Give it a try.
Do you have any article on that homeless project? I'd never heard of it.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, the thing that's really interesting, if I might have just a couple of minutes on this, I went to a United Nations Year of the Family conference in Salt Lake City in 1995, just after I got back from India. And that was when I was in India, they had suffered a huge earthquake the year before. And I thought that this kind of Bucky type housing would be of value. So I kept writing to the founders of this village in LA, and I never got an answer back. So I'm in this conference in Salt Lake City, and I'm in a workshop or a presentation that has to do with housing and whatnot. I'm just sort of tuned out. And then all of a sudden, there was what sounded like an argument or a little bit of conflict going on between the presenter and somebody in the audience. And so then I started to look around to see what was going on in the audience. And I looked down the row I was sitting in, and 2 or 3 people down, there was 2 guys sitting there, and they were in the animated sort of back and forth. And they were the two guys I'd been looking for 6 months while I was in India. And I found them in Salt Lake City in the auditorium where the conference was being held. And let me just, now we're on Salt Lake. Let me tell you two other things. I was also telling some people about the connection between Bucky Fuller and Einstein. And somebody said to me, "Oh, really? How would you like to meet one of Einstein's students who lives up in, is it Park Valley or Park
City.
City?
Yeah, Deer Valley, which is up by Park City.
Kind of up in the mountain area." And I said, "Well, sure." And the next thing I knew, they had arranged it, and I went out. It was a March night, so it was cool but clear sky, all the stars out.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting on the porch with this 80-year-old guy talking to me about his time with Einstein and I think he must have been a physicist. And I'm just sitting there pinching myself saying, "What the hell am I doing here?" Chatting with this guy as if we're old friends, and looking at the moon and all the stars in that time of year and over Salt Lake City. It was an incredible. And one last thing, let me just say this. I also had a colleague, an Indian woman colleague in Bombay, India, where I was at the college. She was traveling a lot, and we wanted to get together to talk about a certain kind of subject, and we never did get together. In that same conference, I was in a workshop area waiting for it to start, and all of a sudden somebody went by me, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a woman wearing an Indian sari, and all I saw was the back of her head, and I knew it was the woman I was looking for, that we had been trying to meet. And we had our meeting in Salt Lake City in the spring of 1995.
There's a lot of good energy here for you, Richard.
Oh, there must be, yeah. Anyway, my apologies for taking a little bit extra time, but Anne, how are you feeling? And what's your takeaway tonight?
Oh, this has been such a fun morning, I must say. And there's something I wanted to update as well. First, thank you so much, everybody, for the sharing, right? Because I really took away a lot today. But the one that I just want to share the outcomes of the meetings that we've been having over the past 3 years plus now that I've joined, this Sunday morning meet. I've been talking about the fact that we've been doing the biosphere curriculum in our school. The crazy thing is these past 2 weeks, no, 3 weeks, we've been having a lot of things coming our way. And one of them is that this was very recent, like 2 days ago. One of the main banks in the country, they want to talk to us because they know about what we're doing. So this is through the partner that's coming on board to do more environmental stuff, because in Asia, the worrying and doing something about the environment is very, very new. Okay, so when we started Biosphere, we didn't realize actually it was 3 years ahead of time. So because we had done something, now suddenly the banks, our national bank, and the SSM, the registration of companies, all of them are making the requirement of that the fact that invest into companies that have ESG compliance, right? And so suddenly the whole in our country, they're looking for solutions, and companies that never thought about the environment is now very interested in the environment, even if it is to work with somebody who's in the environment. So that's one. Number two, we're back in discussion with one developer. Now they've got 5 diamond rating. The only, I think, developer in our country that has this 5 diamond rating for the environmental rating, right? So they have taken charge, or they are managing one of the main wetlands in our country. It belongs to the government, but they're managing. It's right next to their development, so they've got a lot of nature around them. So now we've just put in a request for. They have a school coming up for an international school building, and it is just about 100 meters away from the entrance to the wetlands. I'm chomping at the bit. Last year itself, I was interested, but I had to wait for our investment partner to go have a look. And the minute he saw it, he said, yes, so we're like crossing our fingers that we get that. So that's another thing that came. Then we also got word of one of my ex-students dealing with this other developer. They have got millions to build an area, like a building or an area where children and teenagers can go experience, environmental education and what it's like to work with the environment for the environment. So now we've got a chance at doing this as well, and they also have a couple of 100,000, maybe about 100,000 USD to educate the primary school, secondary school. So now we've become at the forefront of the environmental education. So I'm really, I just want to share this because we went forward, and now when we talk, we're speaking differently. Oh yes, the Bali school, the new principal and the lady who's going to be in charge of the biosphere curriculum there, from our biosphere curriculum there, they were in our school recently. And so the first thing I did was take the opportunity, not just about the curriculum, but to give them the big picture, which we are exploring now, but they're hearing ever for the first time, is cosmic integrity, that the world is eternally regenerative, and the fact that nature has no pollution. So now we're going to be able to impact Indonesia in Bali from Bucky Fuller's perspective. So I'm like stoked. I'm so stoked. So they feel like, because Indonesia, the Indonesians are even further behind us. I'm not talking about a couple of years; they're about 15 years behind us in terms of knowledge and the exposure. I found out there's one reason behind it, because Malaysians, there are more of us who are English speaking. So courses and all that from an international market comes here, but they won't go to, like, say, Thailand. Only recently are they starting to go to Indonesia, because majority of their people don't really speak English. So that is our advantage. And I'm going to drive this advantage through. Okay, so thank you very much. Richard, thank you, Steve, thank you, Joe. Okay, and so yes, Joe, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Thank you, Anne. I feel good to be in here. I think, one of the main things that I take away is that, and I understood this at a pretty young age, is that how the micro and macro kind of work together, in the sense that, you have local zoning boards, and how to deal with that is essentially, it's a unique skill set. And I think having, we can have ideas in these projects, but, these are the political structures that can ultimately get in the way. And so, in knowing how to navigate those, I think can be the difference in, having ideas like Bucky's adopted. So far as the idea, you have to find a trim tab. That project in California could very well serve as that. So I think from that perspective, it's interesting, because I do have a little bit of experience with zoning boards back in my early 20s. And so, and I do have an understanding of what local zoning boards are and how challenging they can be. So that having a proof of concept, and having something that is functional and regenerative, that's energy efficient, as well as environmentally conscious, could serve as a trim tab. But again, it's like anything else. You have to pick the right area. You have to make sure that these are ideas that are going to resonate in other districts and areas. And ultimately, you have to get buy-in at the local level. So it does highlight the macro level, meaning, what you're trying to do. You're trying to serve the planet, trying to serve humanity. But there is this micro level where there are things local, and learning how to deal at that local level is essential. And even Bucky Fuller himself had run into that problem. So one of the things that that Bucky maybe was a little bit overly optimistic with was how technology would overcome certain bureaucratic structures. And that's not always easy to do. So that's what's really kind of highlighted that for me. But that being said, I think that because certain cities or even local areas have become so desperate, mainly due to the flight of, whether it be their industrial base or other forms of globalization, that they might be more willing and open to try new ideas than ever before. And so we'll see. We'll see if somebody can create a trim tab and spur spur some real change. And that's my thought. Yeah. So it was an interesting walking through the case study and walking through the particulars of I'll call it a golf ball. And anyway, Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away from today?
Well, I'm real excited. It's just so fun to have you guys all together here, busting a gut with energy on the vision of Bucky and the potential of what's actually going on in the world today. I love that homeless plan thing. If you have any documentation on that, Richard, I'd love to have that come through. And let me share with you that I've had I've been working on my book on meditation, and I've already made a goal that when I get done with that book, I'm going to go back into real estate and work on housing issues for homeless, and just to create a more sense out of what's going on with housing. Richard, the big problem with changing zoning is that when I put something next door to me that doesn't conform, it really screws up market values. And
Right.
like you say, that one family there, it's one thing to say we need to provide housing for people and we need to get out of our strict requirements. On the other hand, when I lose my market value of my house because I can't see the sun in the morning, because Mount Everest moves in next door to me, that's not quite cricket, right?
Right.
So there's this complex issue of how we make these transitions. And I want to share with you that if I can, I'm going to share that in Salt Lake City, we're having an issue come up. And that is, the issue is this is Salt Lake City right here. My house is that little blue dot right there. My apartment. I live in that apartment right there in that little blue dot. This is famous Temple Square, and if we go clear over here off the mat, that's where Richard met with the Einstein guy, because Park City is over here. There's Red Butte Garden. Then we go up, and Park City. There's Immigration Canyon, and Park City is over here. So and Park City is like 35 minutes away from the Salt Lake Airport, and the Salt Lake Airport is right next to me. I'm 10 minutes away from the Salt Lake Airport. So here's my house right there, and the Salt Lake Airport is right in here, this area here. There's the airport, that blue thing right there. So all this big interchange is for the Salt Lake Airport. Well, the way the freeway looks down here, this has really helped develop the southern part of town. But now with the gentrification that's going on, housing is moving up into my area, and they're building giant apartments up here, and they want to expand the freeway up here to make it look like the freeway down here, because they, just like this gave access to the southern parts of Salt Lake City, they want to give access to the northern parts of the city. And because this is Salt Lake City and the airport's over here, the airport's here, this is all up for development. If they can get a freeway like this up in here, then suddenly we can, we'll just have more to go. Well, what they're doing to do that is they're taking all this is called the Rose Park area and the Fair Park area. This is all low income housing. These are all Hispanic. These are all over here along this bench on this side are all the rich kids. I mean, right here, there's the state capitol is right. Here's Temple Square, the state capitol. Here's the lower avenues. I mean, these homes are $1 million each. And here's the upper avenues. The state capitol is up here. If you take State Street, that's 7th East. So if you drive up State Street, which is right here, that's the Capitol complex right in there, and for the state capitol. And this is really cool. Ensign Park, there's a gravity hill over here where it looks like water is rolling up a hill. It's a great place to park if you're a teenager. Anyway, and in doing this, here's what they're doing. They're going to all these low-income housing people, and they're determining the market value of their house today in their kind of slummy area. So they're going to give them $200,000 for their house. They have or maybe 250. They have a 3-bedroom house, maybe 1,200 square feet, 3-bedroom little house on one floor. They're going to give them $250,000. You can't buy a house anywhere in Utah for $250,000 except right there. So they're going to pay these people market value for their house and basically put them on the street. They're going to have to pay rent, and then they're going to run out. There's their wealth. Now, what this city needs to do is they need to go into these people and say, you have a family of this size, you have this many bedrooms, go out and find a house in a school district that you like, and we'll buy that house for you. That's what they need to do, so that they can take that family, pull it out of its current environment, and stick it in without lowering their standard of living, and buy their house for them. Their taxes are going to be higher anyway, but it's just not fair what goes on with housing. And so at yoga, I was at yoga last week, and I was talking to somebody, and there's a realtor there who's really involved with low-income housing. So, we had a conversation. I said, well, I'm going to wait till after my book. Because of you guys tonight, I'm not going to wait till my book. I'm going to go back to yoga on Tuesday night. I'm going to take this realtor person. I'm going to say, okay, let's do something about this. I have a Canadian friend who's sending me plan on homeless things, and let's go out and get involved in all this zoning and planning stuff. You just sent it to me, Dynamite Richard.
I do. Everybody.
I was hoping you wouldn't send it, because then I would have an excuse, but now I have no excuse. Okay, good. Well, I'm real grateful. And I think looking at the future, I think we'll probably have 2 more nights to finish off the book. And then we'll have appendices. And the appendices basically go through these chronofiles of what facts and things that Bucky used to build this book. And we can examine whether or not we want to review the appendix, just overview it, or if we want to go down each item and list each item, which I don't think would be a bad idea, just because there might be some little spark there that would take the time to do it. But we'll figure that out over the next couple of weeks.
What
Thanks.
address did
What's
you
that?
no, Richard, what address did you send it to? Just out of curiosity. Oh, yeah, I got it. Never mind.
Cool.
That address. I sent it to that address.
Yeah. I've a couple, that's all.
Steve, just to let you know, in the plans, because it's something I've wanted to do for a few years, because my closest cousins, one of them is living in Utah, so plans next year to hit your direction. I'll let you know.
I hope I'm here. I'll change my plans to be here, and it'll be wonderful.
Oh, no, don't worry if you're there. Otherwise, you tell me where to go. Because, and anyway, my cousin has lived there for a number of years, so the sister wants to go. So I'm like, okay, I'll go with her.
Okay, very cool.
I'll let you know.
What part of Salt Lake, Utah does she live in?
Oh, I don't know. I can't recall. You know,
Well,
she's told me, but I can't
We'll
recall.
check
But
it.
now I'll check.
Listen,
Okay.
it's Utah is not that big. I can get to southern Utah in 4.5, 5 hours. So whatever it takes, we'll get connected.
Okay.
Okay. All right, good. All right. See you all next week.
Okay.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye, everybody.
All
Thanks,
right. Bye.
Have a good evening.